this. So this will be posted in all of these Slack channels for everybody to access later. So if anybody needs to drop off, you'll be able to access all this information at a later time. All right, well, welcome everyone. So today we are going to be going over the new Testis Bank study. So it is on stage right now. What we'll see is that it's going to be very, very similar to Testis, just with a few key differences. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we will go ahead and get started. All right, so everybody can see my screen. So here is the admin panel. It is very similar to the Testis admin panel that you are all familiar with. So if you click on participants, it brings you to this page and has the list of all the participants from your study's referral. Click on participant ID, has the same information that you are all used to seeing. For the site referral, it is the same as we've used for Testis. We're just adding the word bank to the end of it. But pretty much everything else here is the exact same. Go back to participants, click on the participant name, and you have all of the same fields that you're used to seeing in Testis. So see down here, the contact info, DocuSign, all of the activities, coordinator forms, which are obviously going to be different for Testis Bank than Testis, and coordinator data proxy. We also have the same reports tab. There's going to be some different reports, but a lot of them are going to be the same or at least very similar to Testis. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through a test user. So the URL that we're going to be using, so again, right now we're testing on stage. So there's going to be a slightly different URL for stage versus production, which is the live site that you'll be using to recruit participants. But for now, while you go do your testing, you're going to use this stage URL. So the URL is testisbank.hehtech.io / and this is going to be specific to whatever site you're at, and it is the same as Testis, all except with the word bank at the end. So UMass Bank. So again, this is the same as Testis, all except we're adding bank to the end of Testis and bank to the end of the study key. So we go here, and as before, that study key gets changed into this RFK gibberish. You don't need to know what that is, but it's all here and brings you to this page. So again, this is the same as production, except here we have this get to the CHOPPA button that is kind of a shortcut to skip the enrolling process, but we're going to just go through the entire process as it goes. So first we'll click get started. Right now, this language here, we're still waiting for the UMass IRB to approve the language. So right now, this is actually what is seen in Testis. This will change though once we get the actual approved language. Come down here, click get started. And now we're gonna sign in. So an important thing, especially for like UMass and Northwestern who have enrolled quite a few Testis participants, that if somebody already has a Eureka login from like Testis or any other Eureka study, they would want to log in rather than create a new account. But that probably won't happen too often. So anyway, we are going to create an account, Testis Bank training. email address. And if anybody has any questions at any point, please don't hesitate to stop and ask. So for the cell phone, just for testing purposes, I'm going to click I don't have a cell phone. Just like in Test Us, if you are using the mobile app, you will need to enter in a number there because there'll be a text back. Very similar. So eligibility survey, pretty straightforward. First question is their default language. If they click Spanish, right now we do not have the IRB approved Spanish translation. So if they click Spanish for now, it is still going to be in English. But once we have that approved language, we will add that in and this will all come in Spanish. So eligibility criteria, they have to be 18 years or older. They have to be willing to get tested for COVID with a swab from the middle part of their nose, willing to answer questions about symptoms and exposure to anyone with COVID. And they have to be willing to provide at least one of the samples below to be stored for future research on COVID-19. So yes to all of these questions. And then the last question is, which sample types do you plan on providing in addition to your COVID test? So for this question, they have to select one of these choices. If they select none of the above, they would be deemed ineligible. So they have to select one, but they're not, it's not set in stone. They can change their mind at any point as far as which samples they want to provide, but like I said, at least one. And hit submit. They're eligible. Go ahead and get started. Go to the consent. Again, this is all pretty similar to Test Us. No big curveballs yet. They must click to agree to use electronic records and signatures. Click continue. Right now we just have placeholder consent because we're still waiting on the IRB approved consent, but for now it'll just be a checkbox and click finish. And now they're ready. So far this is all pretty much the same as Test Us. Anybody have any questions yet?
Yeah, Dylan, this is Barcy from Iowa. I just had a question about your consent form and the DocuSign and the checking the box, etc. Is this considered for this study and for the other Test Us study? Are these considered quote unquote signed informed consents?
Yeah. So once they click the checkbox, yeah, that is the IRB has approved that as a signature, so that is a sign.
Okay, because I think somewhere in the MOP on the Test Us project, it says that we don't have a signed informed consent. So I don't know. I don't know if I can find it, but it was just a little confusing. Which this seems like it is a signed informed consent. Yeah, it's not a big deal. I just wanted to kind of, my impression is that it is.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if anybody from the UMass side might know how to answer that better, but yeah, the checkbox counts as a signed informed consent.
Okay.
And they're able to proceed with the study from there.
Checkboxes can count as a signed consent. It all depends on what the IRB is asking for, and in some limited respects, they will ask for a e-signature, but sometimes they're okay with the checkbox.
Yeah, I just, there is some language, I think it's in the MOP that just says there is no signed informed consent. I'd have to dig through the MOP to find it, but I thought I read that, so.
Maybe they're talking about a physical paper, because I know that one of the things with this study was that everything was going to be electronic and there won't be a paper trail, and I think that's what it's talking about.
Okay, thank you, Pete.
All right, thanks. Great question. So I'm going to go back to the admin panel here and show what we've done so far. So this is our user test us bank training. They're consented. Oops, sorry. Consented, signed today. All right, so if we click on our user, we will see our signed consent here, approved and signed by participant on 4/20/2021. So we need that to move forward. We'll see in the activity panel, our eVisit 1 is open and we have all of our surveys here. These surveys are going to be almost identical to Test Us. They're actually in a different order for Test Us Bank than they were in Test Us, but the surveys themselves are essentially identical. So let's go back to our user and we'll walk through these surveys real quick. We're going to go through this really quickly, just for the sake of time, but for everyone testing, make sure you go through and really make sure that everything looks right and is functioning properly. So we're going to say our participants 3'3", 123 pounds, male, man, Black or African American, no Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin or ancestry, looking for work, unemployed. Yes, they're in school, they have a GED or equivalent. So same health insurance questions from before. We're just going to say they are covered by everything. They have all health insurance and they're extremely confident. All right, so next is COVID-19 experience. These questions are pretty much the same as Test Us. For some people who haven't used Test Us in a while, there's a little bit of changes that have occurred recently. Have you ever been tested for the novel coronavirus? We're going to say yes. We're going to say they had both kinds of tests. One of the changes that we just clarified this language by adding what, how many weeks ago was your last test for active COVID, because some people were a little bit confused about that. We say is 1 week. And the other one was also 1 week ago. And again, do you know the result of your last test for active COVID? And we're going to say negative for both. In the past week, in the past 2 weeks, have you been in close contact with anyone who recently tested positive for COVID? We're going to say yes. About how many days ago? We're going to say that was 4 days ago. Have you had any of the symptoms? We're going to say yes, they had fatigue. No, they did not seek medical care. How many days ago did these symptoms start? We're going to say it was yesterday. In the past 48 hours, has anyone other than you in your household had any of these symptoms? Oh, one thing I'll just mention is that this list of symptoms has changed in the past few weeks based on the NIH's list of COVID-19 symptoms. So very similar, but there's a slight differences for anybody who hasn't used Test Us in the past couple of weeks. And then this question also reflects those changes in symptoms here. So we're going to say no to this question. In the past 48 hours, how many people outside of your household have you interacted with? We're going to say 0. Have you ever had a COVID-19 vaccine? We're going to say yes. They're going to ask which kind. We're going to say it was Johnson & Johnson. Only 1 dose. And what was the date of your first COVID vaccine? Let's say it was April 1st. And have you previously received any of the following treatments for COVID-19? And say they got dexamethasone. Are you currently receiving any of the following treatments for COVID-19? We're going to say they click other. They can put in whatever they want. Vitamin D, and then submit. Have you ever been told by a doctor or nurse that you have any of these? So this is the exact same medical conditions survey that we had before. So we're going to go ahead and click no for everything here. There's been no changes here, so if you've used Test Us, this survey is exactly what you've seen before. And as before, these two questions are actually optional, so they can click submit without answering them. And as before, tobacco history is also optional, so we're going to skip that. Alcohol use is also optional, so you can skip that. You don't necessarily need to tell your participants that these are optional, but if they tell you that they don't want to answer it, you can let them know that they don't need to. Medications, same activity as before. So we'll say they're taking ibuprofen, 100 mg tabs, say they're taking 2 every 6 hours. And that's it. Let's see, that was there. They could either add more or save and continue. And medications is not a required activity, so they can just click save and continue without entering anything if they want. Shipping address activity, also the same as before. Click submit. All right, and that brings us to the next steps activity. So this is for UMass, and it has the UMass contact info here. This will be different depending on which site you are enrolling at. So it'll have your site's contact information. And click submit. And now they're good for now. So again, up until this point, very similar to Test Us, but here's where it gets a little bit different in Test Us Bank. So back to the admin panel, we can go to participants, go to Test Us Bank training, go to our activity tab, and we'll see that eVisit 1 is complete. Just going to verify one more time that our consent is complete. Yes, it is. Good to go. So now we're at coordinator forms. So the coordinator forms are very similar to Test Us, but there's a few that are very different. So we'll go through that right now. So first is sample collection. So we have this tag here, ensure that all eVisit 1 activities are complete, which we just did that. So we are good to go. So first form is a standard test order form. So session number, if you have it, you can enter it along with specimen ID, but if you do not have those, you can leave them blank. What is the ordering provider's name, NPI, and zip code? So we made this a little bit easier and just made this a drop down with all this information, so you don't have to type this in every time. So since this is UMass, we're going to put Dr. Gibson. I would definitely recommend everybody make sure that you have the right ordering provider name, NPI, and zip code on this list as you're going through and doing your testing, and let me know if there's any errors. Performing facility zip code, you should all know that. And then we'll click submit. All right. So the next coordinator form is a standard test sample collection coordinator form. And because we're not testing any devices in Test Us Bank, we don't have that second consent. There's only one consent for Test Us Bank. So once they complete that, you're able to go through and do all of the study activities. So confirm. We're going to say that I was the one who performed the collection. Our standard test since we're at UMass is going to be the Quest Roche Cobas identification serial number. I believe that is optional. Was the sample collection successful? Yes. We say we did this right now. Performed by study staff. It was a midterm. We did both. And there were no concerns about test sample collection.
Dylan, this is Parang. I have a quick question about the standard test order form that we did previously.
Sure.
Just before this last one. For the accession number, if we don't have it, I thought I saw you didn't type in NA. Can we leave that empty, or do we have to type in NA?
We can leave that empty now. Yeah, so we changed that from required to not required, so don't need to enter anything.
Okay. All right,
You're welcome
thanks.
to enter in NA if you want. It wouldn't, I don't think, change anything, unless Peter would disagree with that, but I think we would be okay there.
All right, thank you.
No problem. So back to sample collection. So the standard test sample collection coordinator form, see it, we have this note over here. So submission of this form triggers eVisit 2 activities. So as I said before, since we don't have a second consent in Testis Bank, we do not have the same eVisit 2 that we had in Testis. So eVisit 2 in Testis Bank is more similar to eVisit 3 of Testis, because we skipped that middle eVisit 2 that we had in Testis where we signed the second consent. So this form triggers that follow-up activities. So we're going to go back to our participant account. And we'll see that now we have some new activities. So just like in Testis, we have how to expect your results. There are 4 sections of Testis Bank. So we have the results received, next steps, 2-week follow-up, and then thank you. So the structure, for anybody who's not familiar, is we will obviously inform the participant of their standard test result. And then 2 weeks after their test, we are going to send them a follow-up survey just asking if they've had any symptoms or tested positive since they came in and gave their samples 2 weeks ago. So that is the structure, but this how to expect the results is going to be very similar to Testis, which actually we just recently got rid of this in Testis because we don't need it anymore, but it is important for Testis Bank. So study team will be providing the results of your standard test. Can take more than a week to receive back. Click submit. And then the next question is, hey, I have received my test results. If they have, they would click yes, submit, and they would be taken to the next step survey, which lets them know that your participation is almost complete, and we are going to send you a short follow-up survey 2 weeks after the date of your Testis Bank COVID-19 test. So keep an eye out. So at this point, that is all they have. These next 2 surveys are going to be triggered 2 weeks after they had their test. So 2 weeks later, these will open up in their account. We will send them some text and email reminders to go in and complete that. So if you have any participants who are saying, hey, I keep getting notifications about study activities, it's most likely because they need to go in and complete those surveys. Any questions about that?
Yes, this is Prang again. Is the 2-week follow-up survey completable by proxy, or do the patients or participants have to do it?
It is possible to complete it through the coordinator proxy data entry. It is important information. So unlike Testis, where all you had to do was just click yes that they received the results, this is actually data coming from the participants. So if you were to complete it through coordinator proxy data entry, you would need to be doing it kind of interview style and asking them either over the phone or if they had emailed you, or I'm not sure how you would do that, but it is real like information that they'd be getting. So I can show you what that looks like. So you don't need to worry about what I'm showing you right now, but I will just show you what those surveys look like. All right, so this would be 2 weeks in time, they would get these surveys. So symptom follow-up survey, very quick. Since enrollment, have you had any of the following symptoms? So it's just that symptom question again. And then did you test positive for COVID-19 after testing negative in the Testis Bank study? Say no. So if you had a participant on the phone or they emailed you saying that information, then you could theoretically do this through coordinator proxy data entry. And then the last survey is just an informational survey, so there's nothing really for them to do. Just thanking them for their study participation and clicking submit here. This actually completely ends the study for them at this point. There's no more activities that could be sent to them. There's no more messages. They're functionally done with the study, and we can see that in the activity panel. eVisit 1 is complete, eVisit 2 is complete, everything. Green check marks everywhere. We're good to go. All of that seem clear? All right. And for anybody who forgot, coordinator data proxy is this last tab over here, and you would be able to go in and access these surveys on an answer for the participant. But again, you need to have them on the phone or that information to do that, to do those surveys. All right, so that is kind of the flow of the study. I don't think we need to go through every single coordinator form on this call. You're all pretty familiar with this, so you can go through these on your own and make sure that they all make sense. So for sample collection, the standard test is obviously very similar to what we saw on TestUs. For the, the equivalent of the research sample, that is these these 5 coordinator forms here. So it's saliva, mid-turb, nasopharyngeal, dried blood spot, and venous blood. And you would only be filling out, I believe, if anybody from UMass wants to correct me wrong, or if wants to correct me if I'm wrong, but you would only be filling out the coordinator forms for the samples that you actually collect. So if you don't collect a dried blood spot, you would just not fill out this form. Peter, does that sound right from the data end?
Absolutely. And this is one of those things that we talked where they could come back and give more samples, and so that they could then give these subsequent types. So I would not fill them out to say not collected. I would just leave them blank.
Yeah, and what Peter mentioned about them coming back and doing additional samples, Eureka is not built for that right now, so I would not worry about that at the moment. But if that ever does come up, we will probably send out either info or maybe even do another training of how that flow would go. But
Sorry about that.
No worries. Just want to let everybody know that it might be coming up in the future, but for right now, we will not be worrying about that.
Yeah, this is Barcy. I have a question about the, it was earlier on when you were talking about has the person ever had a COVID test? And I'm wondering if there's going to be people that know they had a COVID test, but don't know if it was an antibody test or an antigen test. And if there's, if there's a way, I mean, it looks like you're trying to separate out which one they've had and that kind of thing. And what if they don't know, but they know they had something? What do you want done there?
Yeah, so the question has a I don't know answer choice there. So if they're not sure, they can click.
And is there a way to have the person say, I don't know if this would ever happen, but I would imagine it could, where one test is positive, but the other one's negative?
So if they had a antibody test and a like a PCR test, is that what you mean?
If they had an antibody test, yeah, and they had this PCR test, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, so we have 2 questions. So it's for your last antibody test, were you positive or negative? And then we have for your last viral test, were you positive?
Okay, all right. Yeah, I missed that one. Okay, thank you.
No problem. But that is the one thing that we clarified in the question to add what was the result of your last test, because many people obviously have multiple tests done. So, in that case, they could have 20 negative.
Oh, right.
and
Yeah.
then their last
Okay.
one was positive. So we're only asking about the result of their last test that they got.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. All right. So coordinator forms. This might be new to some of you, this compensation promised. So this should be filled out while you're with the participant, just indicating how much compensation did you promise the participant. And for most of these, it will be, I believe bank is doing 50, but if it's any other amount, you should obviously indicate that. So let's say they were promised 75, and then explain why. We won't go through all that right now, but so that is there just in case. So I think there is something in the chat. Sorry. So Social mentioned in the chat about the mobile study app. So I just want to let everybody know we do have the exact same, just like Testos, we have the study app that we use the exact same functionality. So when you enter in the study key, it will bring them right to the their study. So I do not have my phone set up to show you all that, but you all have done that testing on Testus, so it should be pretty straightforward. It's the exact same functionality. Anyway, so back to this form, compensation promised. When was this promised? We're going to say it was right now because we were with the participant and communicated that. It is me. Submit. All right. So just as before, we're going to have the coordinator forms for logging the standard results, and also for contacting the participants. This form has changed a little bit, so I'm just going to show you real quick. So under the notes, we have caution, do not submit this form until successful contact has been made. This is very similar to Testus. So let's go in and confirm. So let's say we have our quest results. They were negative for COVID, and we're trying to make contact with them. So has a contact attempt been made to deliver the standard test results? We're going to say yes, it was made right now. We're going to say we tried to call them. It was me. And we're going to say that no, the result was not successfully delivered to the participant. So just like before, at the very end of this, it says do not submit this form until successful contact with the patient. So in this case, we would just click the back button. All of our information is saved in that form, but it is not submitted. So let's say it's the next day, I come back and I try to call that participant again. I come in. All of my answers from yesterday are still there. And now I have my second attempt. Has second attempt been made? Yes. We're going to say it's right now by phone. It is me who is making the attempt. And was the result successfully delivered? We're going to say yes. And now we can go back and hit submit. And just like before, we have this pop-up just to make sure that you are not submitting this until you have successfully delivered. But since we have, we're going to say yes. And that form is now submitted. Just as before, study compensation log. Don't need to go through that. Saliva characterization form. So this at the moment is only for coordinators at Hopkins. So we won't go over this in much detail, but the Hopkins coordinators are going to be taking a small aliquot from the saliva samples that they take and do some characterization on a platform that they have there. So if you're not at Hopkins for right now, definitely do not worry about that. You can leave that blank. protocol deviations and adverse events. We have 4 identical forms for logging protocol deviations and adverse events. Exact same as TestUs, so that should be pretty straightforward. The one thing we do not have right now is the master form for corrections. That will be there by the time that you start testing, but since we are still making some tweaks to the platform, we decided not to add that in quite yet. But functionality would be the exact same as TestUs. Any questions about that? Any questions about the flow of the study, how TestUs will be used, anything at all?
Would there be a follow-up training just to go over things again once we start?
If we feel like it is needed, we can provide another training later on. I think that once everybody, kind of walks through the study, it should be pretty straightforward, but I'm happy to do some more training if necessary later on.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So,
This is Karen. I just wanted to ask from Eureka's perspective for refreshers, about how many test patients would you prefer sites kind of click through in TestUs Bank? I know typically for a proficiency call, you prefer to have like 5 test participants, both on the mobile app and the web. So I wasn't sure if it might be site dependent based on, how long it's been since certain sites have been working in Eureka. So just want to get a sense of that.
I would say probably 3 to 5 test users per coordinator would be great. If you make 3 and all 3 of them are done perfectly each time, you're probably okay. If you made some mistakes in your first couple, then do a couple more just so you really understand the flow. We do not have a formal training like we had for TestUs, at least not at the moment, since this is so similar. We thought it might be overkill to do that for TestUs Bank. But if anybody feels like you're not ready to enroll a participant yet using the platform, definitely let me know and we will do some more training to make sure that everything is clear. Yeah, we're just trying to balance, like we don't want to put too much burden on you and give you too many tasks. But if you feel like you're not ready and not fully understanding the workflow, definitely let us know and we'll do some more training before you get there with live participants. Does that sound right to everybody? Okay.
That works for me.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
There we have one more chat. Oh, of course. Great. And if anybody, I'm sorry that I did not have my phone ready to show the app, but like I said, the app is very similar to what you've done in TestUs. But if you do need a refresher on that, I'm happy to do that at a later time as well. It sounds like that's about it. Social, do you have anything else you want to add about TestUs Bank? Any differences that I might have missed from TestUs?
No, I think you covered everything. It's very, very similar. So I think the most challenging thing going forward is making sure that when you intend to enroll someone in TestUs Bank, that we're operating in TestUs Bank versus TestUs. So yeah, I think that's really the only, I guess, challenge, and just making sure that everyone's brain is in the right place.
Right. And there's definitely going to be, sometimes you're going to type in testus.eurekaplatform.org just because you're so used to that, and then you're not going to be able to find your participant. So if you can't find your participant, double check the URL, make sure you're on the right admin panel, because it is a different admin panel for TestUs versus TestUs Bank. That's a great point.
This is Karen. I just wanted to make sure before we jump off, it sounds like we're winding up. So thanks everybody for jumping on and to the Eureka team for doing this. I just want to keep track of sites who are on the call right now. And I apologize, I don't know everybody's name at the USC Prisma site or Northwestern. Do we have anybody from USC Prisma on the call? If not, that is okay. We will make sure to share this with them. Okay, I don't see anybody. And then what about Northwestern? Okay, then I do see Oregon, Iowa, Kansas, Johns Hopkins, and obviously UMass. So I think we just want to make sure we share this with USC and Northwestern, and eventually UMass will.
Yes. I'm here, Etienne. I'm from Northwestern.
Oh, thank you, thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, and just like before, to go ahead and get testing, you will have to request access to the admin panel. So I will send all this information in your Slack channels. But yeah, the process will be the exact same as what you did for Test Us. So if you have any questions there, you can let me know. We'll use the same process as we used before, where we will identify a study manager who will be responsible for then approving all other admins from your site. Yeah. So please try and get on and do some training today if possible, because we are still going to make a few changes to the platform. So if you want to, something's not working properly, we would love to know that as soon as possible. I'll go mention in the chat timeline for Spanish app. I believe that is in the IRB's hands right now. I don't think Caitlin's on this call. Karen, do you happen to know the status? Oh, there you go. IRB approval should be today or tomorrow. So yeah, by the time we start recruiting participants, we should have all the Spanish language in there. All right, well, if there's no other questions, I think we can go ahead and end the call. Thank you everybody for joining us. Like I said, I will be posting some information for you all in the Slack channels for you to get on and start testing the platform. And please, any questions you run into, don't hesitate to ask, and be ready to start enrolling participants soon.
Are you going to give us sample participants to test?
Was not planning to, but we could do that if you think it would be useful. I don't think that would be a bad idea to make a few, maybe 3 test users and give you the information to get started.
Well, I really miss Conan. So.
All right, we'll get started on that. We'll send you some test users and some test scenarios to get started, okay?
Thank you.
All
Dylan,
right.
I have a quick question about the admin account for Testus Bank.
Mhm.
Does that share does it share the login with the Testus site?
If they were a Test Us participant,
I mean, for us admins, for the Stage website.
Do you use the same login information? I see what you're asking. Yes, you do.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. But you'll still need to request, and we'll have to approve you just like before. But yeah, you'll log in with the same credentials that you used in Test Us. All right, well, it sounds like that's it. Good luck testing, and please let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody, have a great day.
Thank you.